Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane, and I am the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, which is in the US, because I see some people from all over the world here. And I'm really, really excited. Everybody knows this, really excited to be talking with Nalini Singh and Ilona and Gordon Andrews of Ilona Andrews about paranormal books and their newest releases and everything about what they've been up to. But before I get to them, because we want to spend the whole hour on them, I just wanted to do a couple things. One is to thank the Friends of the Ashland Public Library who support all of our programming. I'd also like to thank Robert Hayes from the Tewksbury Library because he is partnering with us on this program and has let us use his massive Zoom to make sure that we can accommodate everybody who wanted to be here today. So thank you so much. You can buy signed books from Nalini and Ilona and Gordon from East City Bookshop. And I will put the links for those in the chat. And everybody knows there's nothing better than signed books. So, run out and get them. I will put those in the recap email as well. So without further ado, I'm not going to say a whole lot about Nalini and Ilona because they'll be telling you about themselves. But obviously, they're amazing paranormal writers. They both have books out coming out. Nalini's book, Resonance Surge, is coming out a week early in July 18th, right?
Yeah,
July 18th. And Ilona and Gordon just birthed Magic Claims, which I have also heard is called Magic Clams in some worlds. It's hilarious. So let's get started. I'd love to know, first of all, I know, before I forget, use the chat for whatever chatter you want. We're happy to hear from you, but I'm only going to be taking questions in the Q&A. And because we have an hour and you guys are so into this, where I know we're not going to get to a lot of questions, but we'll try to get to as many as possible. So my first question really is, have you ever met Nalini and Ilona and Gordon? Have you ever met in real life?
Yes.
Yeah.
More than once. Yeah.
We sat down somewhere and talked about, I don't know if I can say this, but like self-publishing.
Yep.
Didn't we?
Yeah.
Have a discussion about that?
I think that was really when it was, I think maybe taking off and everyone was curious about it. And I think, and I think maybe you guys were already doing some and I was asking you how.
We the Innkeeper as a serial on the book and as a self-pubbed, which our agent wasn't too thrilled about at the time.
Yeah, I remember everybody was telling us, you're crazy.
You're crazy.
No, it worked out. It worked out. But yeah, we used to meet each other at conventions. So there was all conventions like romantic times,
RWA.
RWA.
We'd see you at RWA sometimes.
So you had all this stuff, and it was kind of like the time when we as authors got to see people that you would see once a year, basically, friends, our colleagues. So we used to meet quite often. Unfortunately, there's no more conventions anymore. I guess there's some, but no big ones, right?
Yeah, not like that. There's now those signings, like the author signings, the big author signings, which I suppose are the what's taken the place of the big conventions like RT and RWA that we used to attend. Yeah, I used to really look forward to it, particularly because, like you said, it's once a year. You see some people, and it used to be, and then I think also the pandemic really put a spanner in the works. I know for me, I couldn't leave New Zealand for 3 years, so just haven't been over your way at all for anything for a while.
No, we haven't flown for 3 years, haven't we?
Yeah,
it's been like 3 years since we've flown.
Since we've flown.
Oh.
Yeah, not quite as stuck as you are. We traveled a little bit, but we mostly drove.
It really changed. I think the whole landscape changed quite significantly from when we were going to all those conventions and meeting up. It was just a different environment, and a lot of changes in that time period, because between us we've been around for a while, so we've seen a lot of shifts in how the industry works.
So many changes. The era of blogs has passed. We used to have all those just explosion of different reviewer blogs. RT is no longer there. Although hilariously, somebody bought the domain of RT reviews and they're turned it to a review site. So they're reviewing, but as far as I can tell, they're not really affiliated with RT in any way. They just bought the domain. So, but yeah, it's just, it's changed so much. Print
Mm.
no longer king. You remember when print was like, oh, what is the number of the print run? And it was a tragedy if it was like 5,000 paperbacks less than it was before or something like that. And it's just, now it's like print, what print, who cares? You know, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of big shifts. And I remember even reading interviews with the authors who came before us, and just the massive print numbers. And I used to be like, wow, I can't even imagine that kind of print number for just normal authors, you know. It didn't have to be, yeah, it's amazing.
It has changed so much. It's kind of, it's shocking, and it keeps changing. Like stuff just always varies now, you know. Like I used to give like industry and writing advice, and now I put a disclaimer: this is only good for the next 3 months, you know.
Well, and also this is based on our experience. You know,
Yeah.
usage may vary for you. It may
Yeah,
be
your
different.
mileage will vary because yes, you know, where we are in our career may not be where somebody else is in their
Mm.
career, you know, and it's so subjective, right? Like it's individual, has a different journey, sort of.
Yeah.
Mhm. So when we had a conversation a few years ago, kind of at the early end of the pandemic. It was Nalini, Gordon, Ilona, and Amanda Boucher. And one of the things that you had mentioned, because we were talking about this, was found families, and how when you guys met at conventions, it felt like a family that supports each other and takes care of each other, and it's somebody to, you know, you meet people that you can, you know, talk to when you're stuck or whatever. So what have you done in the middle, since there are no conventions and you don't have that opportunity anymore? What do you do to connect with other authors when you need help?
I think social media has really stepped in, and so I have two groups. Like I have my local group, which I have been friends with since before I was published. You know, these are just small tight group, and I still see them regularly. So that's, you know, I feel really lucky that I have these wonderful people around me. But then there's certain conversations I have with authors that are just online now, you know, like we're still friends. And for example, if I had a question that I thought Ilona or Gordon could answer, I would just email them. And that communication hasn't stopped. I think it's just taken different forms. And I know some author groups do their own Zooms and stuff, like just to connect and, you know, have that online discussion face to face. But yeah, I think social media has taken a big chunk of that. I don't know. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yes, and you know, it's harder to answer for us because we're hermit-like. We're basically mushrooms. And, we kind of like will grow and blossom sort of in front of the computer screens. But I have to tell you, I don't keep up as much as I used to. I used to be in the nexus of this gossip that would just flow through me. And so like I had kind of like I was a depository of weird rumors and like strange things that people did, like because several people would tell me like, oh my God, have you heard this? You know, some juicy and I don't even get as much of that anymore. In a sense, it's good because it takes a lot of like drama and weirdness and uncertainty out of things because you just don't know what other people are doing. You don't know what problems they're having, and you know what this publisher is doing, what that publisher is doing. So instead of me being basically kind of a person that hears all of that, I now just rely on our agency, and I'm like, okay, Nancy, what are they doing? You know, and they basically have a lot of gossip. I still call like a few author friends. You know, I call like Jenny and Frost, for example, on a regular basis, and I'm like, did you hear about this craziness? It's just like, oh yes, I got the dirt, let me tell you. But you know, we just haven't kept up as much. We worked a lot more though, and to me, that's really what it's about. You know, Mina, you mentioned it was kind of a family atmosphere. to an extent it was, but a lot of it was simply professional atmosphere where we would meet to really kind of swap data, because so much of the writing and publishing takes place, kind of behind closed doors. You don't know what the other author's advances, you don't know what treatment they're getting, you can't compare because none of that data is available. You know what I mean? You can't say, well, this author has gotten this advance and they have that much marketing. Why do I have a fraction of that? And publishers like to keep it that way. So that's where the conventions really were essential. It was so you could basically kind of keep up and find out. And since Gordon and I are kind of out of that loop for now, being fully self-published, we're kind of enjoying.
Yeah, I am myself naturally solitary, so I was prepared for it. I feel like, I was right all the whole time. So, but I mean, we're fortunate and we have each other, and we have, Janine Frost, who's our friend, and we can reach out to. And like Nalini said, if we wanted to know something that we thought she knew, we would just call her, email. But we just, that is the thing. You don't see people in person like you used to.
I really do regret that, because I would love to just meet people in person and have lunch once in a while. Once a year, I'm good. I'm just extroverted enough for that once a year intense 3 days of convention atmosphere, and I'm good.
So funny. So let's get, as people in the chat are just like astounded that you can just pick up the phone and call Janine Frost or Susan Elizabeth Phillips or Kennedy Ryan or Sonali Dave or whatever. Like, it's just like, oh my gosh. Like, for us, that's, astounding and mind-blowing, where you guys like, oh, let me just call up my friend. So let's get into the book. Let's talk about resonance surge first. What's happening in resonance surge, Nalini? Tell us.
So this is part of the Psy-Changeling Trinity spin-off series, and if anyone who's in the chat hasn't tried the books, you can start with Silver Silence, which is a great starting point because it features bear changelings, and Resonance Surge also features bear changelings. So we're going back to that. It's a fun book because they're just fun characters. They just like to party, and they're very smart, but they act like they're stupid just to make people sort of on the back foot, right? So they're oh, well, I'm just a big lumbering bear, and meanwhile, they've got 1,000 things going on in the brain. But this is an interesting book because obviously in my world, I have the Psy who have these huge telekinetic, telepathic powers. And so far, all of the characters have been quite powerful. But in this one, we have Thea, who is very low gradient. She is considered basically worthless by her family. Like, she's just got like some little office job they kind of shoved her into because she's only a 2.1 telepath kind of thing, and like, why would we want to pay attention to her? And so that's sort of the setup. I won't get too much into it, but the excerpts on my website. But this book is about secrets, because there's a lot hidden in the past of her family, and she's going to end up being the one that sort of blows it wide open. But it also features, and I did not plan this, but it features 2 pairs of twins. And so both the hero and or both protagonists are twins, a set of twins. So it's because it's part of a series, there's a lot that I can't talk about without spoiling everything else. But just come for the bear fun and for the telepathic shenanigans and the politics going on in the background. I think it's just tonally, I think it's a really warm book. Because with the changelings, the books tend to be warm because they are very family oriented. There's friendship oriented. They are the opposite of Gordon. They are not loners, and they just like to be in this big group, and they just like to be in everyone's business. And they're fun characters, and I like how all the changelings are very different. The wolves are more sort of lone wolves kind of thing, and then we get the leopards who are even more, they're cats, so they're off. They don't even want to live together. They just want to go live in the forest by themselves. That's kind of my little blurb about Resonance Surge.
Okay, I was lucky enough to read an arc, so I won't give anything away, but are we allowed to talk about the secondary love stories?
Yes, of course, of course. Yes, go for it. So do you want to start that off, or?
Actually, I just wanted to ask if I can ask, and I will ask you about that in a minute, but I'm gonna move over to Ilona and Gordon to talk about magic claims, and then I'm gonna come back to that because everybody wants to know about magic claims and this merch shop that you have opened.
I have
Ask away. I'll
Ask
tell
away.
you all the things.
Well, I know you guys will give spoilers without me asking, so go for it.
Oh,
Well, let's see. Magic Claims is the second story in the Wilmington Files. The Wilmington Files feature Kate and Karen, and they kind of take place a few years after the events of Magic Triumphs. So this is Kate and Karen trying to figure out sort of, okay, what does our happily ever after looks like? And predictably, there's violence. So I don't know, with Magic Claims, when we wrote it, and our one of our basically primary editors read it, she said, you know, this is the most thriller-like in structure that you have ever done. And I tend to agree. It's this thing where there's this mysterious evil and you don't know what it is, you know, you can't figure it out. You don't know until the very end.
Yeah, in that sense where it's like the evil thing in the woods, my mind kind of goes to Army of Darkness, you know, this sort of mysterious evil.
Yeah, mysterious
presence in the
evil
woods.
Yeah. And so that's we like to play with that. We had fun, and we think that we did something surprising. It's not the kind of villain or the kind of general like kind of enemies that we played with before. So we enjoy doing that. As far as the merch shop, it is a nightmare. We have
we made our oldest daughter work on it.
Yep.
We
had to
put her to
outsource.
work.
Yep, because it was just too much. We did very, you know, when we opened it for the first time at Christmas last time, we did a certain volume of sales, and that's kind of what we inspected. Maybe, you know, 50% over that. We quadrupled our sales volume, which sounds like it's really lucrative and profitable, but you have to remember this is fan merchandise. Our margins are very tiny on this. So it's like, picture like really large amount of money coming in and immediately going out to fill.
Yeah, like her eyes got real
Coming in,
big.
and then
We said
going
numbers
out.
and her eyes were like big because we promised her a cut, right?
And we were
And
like,
then-
no, this is sales
that's
volume.
sales, sweetie. Like,
It's not profit.
like bring it way lower those expectations, kiddo.
Down, yeah. So we are almost through our orders. We were going to basically get everything done by Friday, but now unfortunately it's going to look like more like Monday when everything will be filled, because we still have supplier issues. BDH, our fandom kind of cleaned people out, and we also are, you know, we're trying to check the orders, although I have to tell you there's just too many. I don't know how much more we can do this. And you know, hopefully we're trying to make sure that everything is good and accurate, but everything will go into production by Monday. We will get it there. We are more than 2/3 done with the order thing.
And I will say, like, she and Kid One, who shall remain anonymous, have been very good about double checking orders, responding to issues, and there are issues.
You know, and there's just fans do some strange stuff when they order merchandise. Like we had one person who wrote basically her first name, and for the last pay and name, she basically wrote none of your business. And so now we're in a tug of war with our basically print provider, who's like, we can't fill this order, there's no last name. And I'm like, well, she wanted to remain anonymous. We have to respect the fact that she's anonymous. She paid us money, fill the order, you know. So it's kind of like,
but if you want something mailed, you have to fill out your name. I'm on the side of like, I get you want anonymity, but if you want us to send something to you,
You
we
kind
kind of need your
you know,
name.
gotta
and
need your name and
We need
address.
your government name and we need to know where you live.
So this is probably way more than you wanted to know about our merchandising
Yeah.
efforts. We're done. Let's move on,
Okay.
Nina, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, well, I'm curious, obviously people love the merch and everything, but I'm curious about this whole concept of how do you engage your readers in such a way, because like you have such big fandoms, both of you. And Nalini, I don't think you have merch. I think sometimes you do giveaways, and we all are
I
like,
do have a merch store that I just never promote. So yeah, like it's really small. It's nothing on the scale. I had a look at your store. I saw it online, and it's really cool. Like mine is like tiny. It's just got a few things, but it is fun. And like they said, it's not. There's no profit in it. I do it for the fans because I know it's fun, and yeah. So it is around. I think the merch is not necessarily the engagement. The merch comes from the engagement. So it's all, we were already having these having fans and talking to them and kind of finding out what they want, and then that's where the merch sort of comes from. It's not the other way around, I think. Yeah.
And all of our merch is very like, you have to know the joke to get the joke. Like, okay, so in Magic Planes at some point, like, there's this funny scene where Kate basically is using a stick, to poke something magic, And so, so we have a mug that says, "Don't make me deploy my freakish shit testing device with a stick on it," So you have to know the joke. It doesn't, and we try not to have like Ilona Andrews anywhere on the actual merchandise, because it's not about it's more about like the hee factor. This is funny,
No, I agree. I agree with Nalini. In a way, it's fan service. It's taking care of the fans, and it can be a lot. But like, as far as engagement, we wouldn't have a store if we weren't writing books.
Yeah.
To put on. So for me, the main thing is always the books, and then there can be like merchandising. The Yoda-like character in Spaceballs. Mel, yeah.
Yeah.
But like without the books, what would we sell?
Merchandise?
Right.
Subject, I do need to give you guys a PSA. So we personally are not affected by this, but we know Patricia Briggs, for example, was. There are groups springing up on Facebook that are peddling basically fake merchandise. Usually have the author's name. It would be like, okay, let's say Ilona Andrews fan group, but it's not the main fan group. It's an offshoot, and people join it and they're bombarded with links for merchandise that is not, has no affiliation with anybody, no affiliation with the authors. So if you're thinking of buying merchandise from your favorite, author, go to their website and go, look for the merchandise link there. Don't do it on Facebook, unless you know for a fact that it's official author page posting it. Because otherwise, people are very unscrupulous and they may take advantage of you.
Yeah, it's Fugazi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get back to the writing because we have lots of questions here. And Nalini, I'm going to ask you about that secondary love story at some point because we need to talk. But so Sherry asks, are your books more character driven or plot driven? That's a tough question, I think, but like I'm going to ask it anyways because Sherry asked it. So I'll start with Nalini on that.
I think character most of the time, probably. Yeah, the characters speak to me and we sort of explore the world together. But sometimes it changes book to book. So I write straight thrillers as well. So not romantic thrillers, just straight thrillers. And a lot of those are plot-based. Like I need to have the structure of the thriller element. So, everything can be woven in, which is an unusual way to write for me because I usually just dive in and see what the characters kind of show me. And so yeah, I find it really difficult to give a hard and fast answer to that. Like characters are really, really important, but I think if you write a series particularly and there's a lot of world building, there's a lot of plot elements that are going on from book to book to book, so the plot is really, really important as well. So it's a fine balance, and this far into my career, I've learned that I can't predict anything. So I could say, oh yeah, I always do it this way, and then the next book will be like, no, you don't, ha ha ha, you know. So it's fluid. But I think characters are often the heart of a story, particularly in a romance, because it's about the emotions. But if you want to write a strong romance with a speculative fiction background, paranormal or urban fantasy, science fiction, whatever, the plot elements also have to be very strong. So yeah, just that's a complete non-answer. So I'm just going to throw it to Ilona and Gordon now.
All yours.
No, oddly, I agree with Nalini. Sometimes it's about thinking of a character and the world. That's how we start. Like, I think that's how we started with Kate, the idea of, and then what sort of world would produce a character like Kate, and then we have to think of things for her to do, which is probably the plot bit. I would say for Wilmington, like, we start with Kate and Kern, and then we think like, well, they can't just like be at the castle, but we need something for them to go and do.
Yeah.
So then we have to think of the plot. Like, what could they go and do? They don't change that much as characters, and they grow, but they're still themselves. But we need to put them in new situations there, and then we basically have to think of a plot. And that's the sticky bit.
That's kind of equally important, to be honest with you. Nalini was a little bit more to the paranormal romance spectrum than we were when we all started. We started probably about the same time. And so she has a deeper understanding of like the romance and what takes place. And for us, we were more hybrid. Always it's kind of straddling that line between urban fantasy and paranormal romance, which is urban fantasy. A lot of the urban fantasy tends to be almost a PI or a police procedural with romantic elements and paranormal elements. And so for those types of books, obviously the mystery, the crime,
The plot,
the plot is very important, and just as well, I was never personally, although some people write great romance books like that, I was never personally a fan of romances where they kind of just go from conversation to conversation and nothing kind of happens. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, in particular reading one, I'm thinking, my God, they need like a chariot chase, and the carriage needs to turn over or something, something needs to burst into flames here because I'm just bored, so because of that, I guess I would have to say it's 50-50 for us. It's the plot and the character. They're both equally important. We can't really divorce one from the other, say one is more important than the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't believe you said the D word between the two of you. Okay, fine.
What do you?
Divorce.
Divorce.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh. Okay. So
So
the
because
children are
stop,
grown.
like we're so set in our ways,
it's
Yeah.
fine. Okay, so I have to ask, both of you are coming out with books, this Magic Claims and Resonancers, that are very long running series. So what came first for you when you first started these series? Was it the character, the plot, or the world? Nalini?
Whew. So I literally cannot answer this. Oh, no, I can slightly answer this question because it began with a question. The Psy-Changeling series began with a question, which was, so I was always interested in like things like mental abilities, right? Like telepathy and stuff. So one time when I was a teenager, I did a science fair project on telepathy. My friends thought it was cool. I don't know if the science teacher was that impressed, but I made them do that card test, like hold the card behind and see which one does. It was fun. It was really fun. But so I was really interested in all that. And then one day I was just sitting there thinking, I thought, what if it was really real? Like, not just we think some people have more extrasensory abilities, but we know like it is a sense that people have. And then I thought, well, how powerful would it be? And we get to like really powerful. Like I could telepath Ilona right now, from across the world. And then I thought the next question was, well, what would be the cost of that kind of mental power? Because it's all going on in your brain, right? And the next question was, well, what if it drove you insane? What would you do to survive? And so that is actually the genesis of the entire Psy-Changeling series, is grappling with that question. And then once that idea got in my head, I started writing compulsively. So I cannot tell you the rest of where the characters came from. And I just obsessively wrote this book. I wrote the first draft of Selector Sensation, which is the very, very first book, in about 3 weeks. And I was working full time. So I barely slept. I barely ate. It just poured out of me. It was like all those years of having those thoughts, considering those ideas, it just coalesced in this book. But yeah, I can pinpoint that critical question which underlays the entire series. That is the foundational question, because how do the Psy survive? And they made certain choices because of their abilities, and those choices have come back to bite them. So it's like, where do we go from here? So yeah, that's where it came from for me.
Okay. All right, great. And Ilona, Gordon, what about you for the Kate Daniels series?
The new one or the original series?
I would say the original. Where did that?
It's the Magic Bites, our very first book, is old enough to drive. So I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. That was literally like 2 million words ago.
I'll be honest, I may be wrong, but I think we thought of the world.
We may have.
And then the kind of person that would be in that world. So it's either we thought of the character and the world that she would grow up in, or we thought of the world and the kind of person that would grow up in that world, and kind of came up with a loose blueprint for what became Kate Daniels, which wasn't even her original name. Do you remember?
No, it wasn't her original. Here's the thing. We were both really, I remember, kind of mad, let's say, at certain books where the books seem to be always about the magic going out and going out of the world. Tolkien started this, and it's just like, there's a lot of fantasy books where like magic is waning, and magic is disappearing, it's tragic and sad, and it's the last unicorn, and there's all this stuff, right? And we were like, what if we had all the magic ever, and it was an invasive force rather than it was something that was waning.
What if it's, oh shit, the magic is coming back, and then eventually, like, it's the opposite. Like, you can see in the long run, perhaps technology will leave. How are we going to live? What kind of world will we live in? How will we live in this world?
Yeah, and that's kind of how it coalesced. But people ask us about inspiration a lot. Where did you get the inspiration for this, and so on? Inspiration is such an amorphous, nebulous thing. It's very difficult to pinpoint it. One of my friends, for example, dreams her books, and she's like, I dreamt it. That's it. That's where it came from. Where for us, it's kind of this. We start with this kind of vague idea, and then it develops and gets more and more complex. And by the end of it, we don't really remember what started it in the first place, because so much thinking energy has gone into it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, personally, I was hugely influenced by things like Flash Gordon, that would have a mix of magic and technology, almost seamlessly, just taken for granted.
Thunder the Barbarian.
Yeah, right. Thunder the Barbarian, which was a world where, and that's the thing about, if you think of the Thunder the Barbarian, that the world as we know it crashed, and then another world rose in its place, and it had magic,
they're kind of like, we're older, and so these are our kind of like our somewhat childhood.
Those would be my childhood influences. I remember thinking that stuff was super cool, probably influenced by that. And there was, no one will remember it, but there was a very old comic book that Jack Kirby was involved with called Command D. And it was like a boy who kind of was in a bunker and then came out in the world that was very post-apocalyptic, very Thundar-esque. I think they actually got Kirby to do some of the art and stuff for Thundar. So I guess a lot of my early influences were what they would be for a kid: cartoons, comic books. Yeah, I wish I could say it was like hardcore sci-fi, which was what hers was, but it,
Mine, no,
I'm not as
necessarily
smart.
by choice. Oh, please, don't listen. I think we've rambled on this.
Yeah.
Yay,
we're
Mina,
good at that.
save us, Mina.
Oh, I'm here for you. But okay, so this is a really good question that I also have. Brittany asks, since you have both written so many books that we love so much, is there anything that happens in your books now that surprises you that you think, well, I never thought that was going to happen? Nalini?
All the time, all the time. I'm not a plotter, you guys. I just, I know the overall series arc. I know where I'm taking you. And then I just sit down and write, and I'm like, oh, well, that blew up in my face, and now I have to deal with it. And it's great. I like it. I actually tried to plot a book one time, like a fully plot out a book, and I never wrote it. It's completely bored. Couldn't make myself get to the computer. So yeah, so I love surprises, and my characters are constantly surprising me, because I think for me that's part of the joy of it, and I think for other people it's horrifying. Like, it just depends on the kind of writer you happen to be. So for me, yeah, there's lots of surprises along the way. You know, there's been characters and I've thought, oh, for sure these two will end up together. Like, I can see it. Yeah, no, I was wrong. There's no chemistry whatsoever. And then other people have ended up together, and I was like, did not see that coming. Like, Silver Silence is a particularly good example. Did not see Silver with Valentin at all. And you know, she's very sort of composed and icy, and then here comes this bear. So did not foresee that at all, and it's fun and I enjoy it. So I don't know, are you guys pantsers or plotters or in between?
You know, we plot, we have like you, we have a very rough idea. We know the beginning and the end, usually. Okay. And then we plot in chunks. So instead of plotting out the entire thing, you know, some people do it like they write like the entire first draft in very broad strokes, right? And then they go and refine it, and then they go in and do it again. I believe, like, I think Nora Roberts actually works kind of in that way. You know, it's more like we plot maybe 3 to 5 scenes ahead, so we know where we're going, you know, and we plot it in not in a great detail. Like, we never do an outline or anything like that. It's like, okay, there's a serial killer, so we're gonna do the thing to where they find the body at the market. And then after the scene with the market, they're going to go home and talk about it, you know, and after that, this is what's going to happen, right? And so you kind of have the broad framework that you're working with, and then we just kind of, you know, sit down and write it. For us, we make less mistakes this way, and we're faster. You know, we don't do the backtracking. We don't do like, oh my goodness, we have to fix that. You know, it cuts down on those accidental sort of things where you make a wrong turn in the novel, and then you have to delete 20,000 words because you were like majorly messed up somewhere. We have less of that with practice, I think.
I think we do, because I know for a lot of people it's word count. Like, if one of our kids will call us and tell us how many words she wrote. But I think for us it's a scene. Like, if we can do a scene, we're happy, and we'll both know at the end of that scene whether it's a keeper. It normally is.
Yeah, it normally
but sometimes it's not, and that's, I guess I'm sometimes surprised when we have to get rid of a bunch of stuff. What was the one we did where we threw away so much? We had more in the goddamn
Ruby
cut
Fever.
file. But like, no, I'm still salty about it. Yeah, it was Ruby Fever.
Yeah, we have
Jesus Christ, what you guys was probably like Ruby Fever 3.5.
Yeah,
there was so
like
much
50,000 words in the cut file.
It was,
but it was like,
sweet
it
Jesus.
was like the only book, basically, I want to say, that really gave us that much trouble. And I blame COVID, because COVID was just so, it made being creative incredibly difficult for us. You know,
well, we would write, and we would realize maybe it is something that is surprising. We would surprise ourselves by going, yeah, that doesn't work.
that doesn't work. This is stupid.
This sucks.
This is stupid.
Yeah, this is terrible.
You know, what
we
the
need
heck?
to stop.
We
Why
need to
are we
stop.
doing?
Why are we doing
We need
this?
to get regular jobs. Clearly,
Yeah,
we suck at
we
that.
tried to actually give the money back numerous times.
Oh
right?
no, we don't give them.
You know, and say like, okay, we're not gonna, let's just cancel this contract. Here's the advance. And they wouldn't let us, and it was just, oh. But I'm so happy that book is done. It's a good book. Like I liked it a lot. I once it was done, but like
Sure.
working on it was just, it was just the slog, guys. My goodness, I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
I remember reading about that on your blog. So Angela asked also a very good question. Which of your characters is most similar to your own personality, Nalini?
I don't know. Like for me, the characters are like different people. Like they're not me. I'm not trying to be me. And so I find it, that's actually a question I've been asked before, and I really have difficulty answering it, because it's like asking if which one of you is most like me kind of thing, you know, like completely different individuals. I guess, you know, if I had to sort of push it, it's probably the person sitting in the corner in the bear den going, oh, what is going on? Need to curl up into a ball, enjoying it, you know, but like I have a certain level of extrovert in me, like Ilona, and then after that I need to go be quiet by myself in front of my computer. So probably one of the quieter characters. I don't know. I'll leave that up to the readers to decide.
Sounds like you're a watcher.
It's true. I think most writers are watchers. It's honestly, it's like, yeah. My sister sometimes says, "Oh, be careful what you say; it might end up in a book." You know, it's a joke. I don't really just take people's words, but I might take little elements that I see. You know, and that's in a non-creepy way. I'm a watcher in a non-creepy way. I just notice things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I notice. I remember way back when. So my career started with Harlequin, right? It started with Silhouette Desire. And one of my books was inspired by me being on the bus. Like, I remember this and it was raining, just a kind of misty rain. And there was you know, like a street lamp, and the rain was kind of falling under it. And you have that, you know, that sort of nimbus of light. And I could just see this woman standing there in my imagination, getting wet. And I thought, who is she? Where did she come from? And so, yeah, that's where it just evolved.
So yeah, your stories can really, your ideas can come really from anything.
Yeah.
Ilona, Gordon, do you have any particular characters that are more like you than others?
We're not our characters.
No, we're not.
We're not. Like
If I'm put on the spot, probably William.
yeah,
me
I mean,
from the
it's
edge.
a favorite character, but you're not really like William.
Yeah, I'm not a
William
werewolf.
lacks basically emotional intelligence. My husband
What?
doesn't.
I'm smart as hell. What are you trying to
No, we work very, very hard to draw a distinction between us and our characters, because people tend to get really personal, you know, and they try to like associate with you with your characters, but you know, this is a job, okay? These are the characters that we write. We're not like that in daily. Yeah. Here's the thing. I think that when you insert like or identify too much with your character, you're compromising the character, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that's when you get characters who authors don't want to do anything bad to, because it's you kind of. So I think, yeah, it's self-insertion into a character actually ends up in sort of bad books, or books that don't have tension, or because just they're too precious to the author.
Yeah.
Or this thing where like the character just takes up so much time on the page, you know, it's all about that character, and you're just like just plot, come on, stuff happens, other stuff that does not involve you happens in the story, come on, let's go, you know. So yeah, we try to avoid that trap, you know. I think we were mostly successful, all of us in the present company,
hopefully.
yeah.
Or for a reader, it might not feel very authentic, because then you're not really writing a character truly to the, you know, how they should be.
Yeah.
Subhoshri asked this really interesting question, and I think that you all do this really well about writing gray characters. And how do you balance morality and ruthlessness She specifically said Caleb and Dimitri, but like, I think that, you know, you all have characters that are very much in the gray. So how do you make that balance? How do you maybe even redeem them? Nalini?
I love writing gray characters. I think gray characters are interesting. And I think most people have a bit of gray in them. Like, most of us are not like shining beacons of goodness or dark pits of hell. You know, like, we all walk somewhere in between. We have things about us that are maybe a little bit darker, and then things about us that are more light. And the balance is different for each person. And I think when I start from that point of view, it's, I don't know, it comes very naturally to write these characters. And then, like I said, I find these questions difficult because I'm quite an instinctive writer. I don't really think about these things until afterward, when someone asks me a question like that. I tend to let characters grow, and I don't decide when they first appear on the page if they are going to be redeemed or not. I want to see what they will do, you know, what they will make of themselves. And if people read Resonance Search, they will see this with a particular character that we don't know. And that is part of the joy of writing for me, that I don't know where these people are going to go and the choices they're going to make. And so, you know, you do have some surprising redemptions, and then perhaps you don't have some. So that's, I think if I knew ahead of time, I'm not sure they would be as interesting of a character, because I think when I don't know if someone is going to become, for example, the hero or the heroine of a book, I write with more freedom, because I don't have to make them be good in a sense that is acceptable from the start. You know, there are decisions made. And I think the reader mentioned Caleb and Dimitri, but I think one of the most interesting characters is Nikita Duncan, who we see, who has never been a protagonist, but she has been in the series from day one, and she actually starts out like really evil. And then you unfold the layers of her, and there's a lot of complexity. Like, a lot of the decisions she made was because she's a mother and she was trying to protect her child, but in doing so she did some horrible things, right? So what is that, where does that leave her? Where is the balance there, you know? So I find her just a really fascinating character to write, just like all of the others. And I think with Ilona and Gordon, I would say probably, from my point of view, it's Hugh. I think Hugh is probably that gray, really, like, yeah. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Do you think it's you?
No, not just a smooth segue.
Yeah.
I'm done looking for Ilona and Gordon.
No, that was a wonderful handoff.
I don't feel like I need to be here.
So, I watch a lot of Chinese dramas, right? And in a lot of them, particularly the ones that are more mythic, that involve gods and monsters, right? There's usually like a demon king character, right? And this is kind of a recurring motif. He hates the world. He hates the world. He wants to destroy it. He wants to make everyone miserable. It's usually never quite explained, you know, why exactly he hates the world so much. He just hates it. He is the force of chaos and destruction. In real life, you know, even you know, people who are villainous, they don't necessarily do villainy for the hell of it. They do villainy because it either basically there's some kind of emotional need they're fulfilling.
It's a cause.
Or it's a cause, or it's like a compulsion, you know, like with a serial killer, it's compulsion to kill. So there's always some kind of reason or understanding or you know, emotion that's involved in the villainy itself. And everybody, like, just as, you know, as the saying goes, everyone is a hero, everyone is a villain. That's true, you know. So I mean, morally gray characters are simply probably characters that are true to life.
Yeah, for me, everyone is saying Ramon or you on there, but for me, like, if I had to say a character, to me that's gray would be Roland. Honestly,
yeah, Roland
in my
is
mind,
very...
Roland is the most gray character, whereas he's the big bad, but he's the hero of his own story.
He is definitely the hero of his own story. That's
So he would never see himself as anything other than a
yeah,
shining beacon of
of progress and
progress.
enlightenment
Yeah.
for the world.
So to me, Roland really is the gray character. Where I don't know about you, or definitely not Roman. Roman's a good
Ramon
dude.
just kind of ended up with a
He's stuck with the
family
family
business,
business.
you
Yeah,
know.
Jing, show me a soda.
He. As far as Hugh was victimized.
Yeah,
He was victimized and tortured, and he did some things. And once, you know, his will was again his own, you know, he is very broke up about it. Like, you know, you kind of have that same thing with Christopher Steed, who was basically, there's this part in one of the books where Hugh had done something bad to Christopher in the past, and Christopher forgiven him. And so Kate is really, you know, puzzled by it. She's like, how could you forgive him? And he's like, well, he was fried basically by Roland. He didn't know what he was doing. You know, I knew what I was doing. I did some horrible, horrible things. If I do not forgive him, there's no chance for me. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, that's kind of an interesting perspective on things. Like, what do we forgive? What is unforgivable? You know, I guess that's what the great characters are kind of trying to explore in a sense.
yeah, and plus we redeemed you as a joke.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
an
a
April
joke.
Fool's
Yeah, that
joke
was an
that
April Fool's joke.
we
that you
had to
guys-
then turn into
a book because you requested it at library. Ian.
We listen to every word you guys say. Oh, funny. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the question that I had for Nalini, and Ilona and Gordon, I'd love for you to answer this too. Is about secondary romances. You know, how do you fit them in? Why do you fit them into your stories, or do you not, and just set up for next books?
Shall I go first, or?
Yeah, sure.
For me, it's just natural. I like writing big casts, and so I always end up like there's very few books I've written where it's a very isolated cast, and so it just happens naturally. And as an example, I'm going to use Angel's Blood, which is the first book in my Guild Hunter series. That was actually not meant to be a series. I was telling everyone I was writing a standalone, and yet I ended up with a complex network of characters in there, and people, and you know, I turned it into my agent like, when's the next book? And I'm like, it's the standalone. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so it's my natural tendency is to write these connections with characters, and so the secondary romances tend to just happen because, you know, you have characters meeting and they're going through, and then sometimes they get to a point where it's like, oh, it needs to have more page time. And in the Psy-Changeling series, we saw this with Walker and Lara. You know, they ended up having more page time because you'd seen bits and pieces, but I feel like when it gets to that point, you know, I have to think about, oh, readers do want to see more of these characters. But yeah, but I also have to be careful with a large cast. I can't show everybody. And I think sometimes readers do get annoyed. It's like, why is so-and-so not on the page? Why are we not seeing this? And I'm like, well, if I did that, the entire book would be, it wouldn't be the book you think you want to read it, but it's not actually the book you want to read, because the entire book would be just, you know, fan service, which is nice to do as newsletter short stories or like extras on the blog or whatever. But a book has a particular structure. You know, there is a story arc that we're telling. And if you keep putting all these people in just because we want to see them, or we want to see how their secondary romance is going, it's going to derail the tempo and the rhythm of the story. And so some of those decisions are hard. Like I overwrite a lot. And so I will cut stuff out because I'm like, you know what, I'm just indulging myself at this point just because I wanted to see these characters. That doesn't mean the reader will never see that material, but it just may not fit into a particular book. Yeah.
I do have to say, we all love your extras on your website and in the newsletter. Ilona, Gordon?
I tend to agree with Nalini. We have to sometimes ask ourselves, does this need to be in the book? Is this necessary
Yeah.
for it? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. Do we do a lot of secondary romance? I'm kind of thinking of
Okay,
like,
Burn and Luna for sure.
yeah, Burn and
Um,
Luna,
okay,
because it's
Jim and
interesting.
Dolly,
Yeah, Jim and
some
Dolly.
for sure.
Was it like
Yeah,
Andrea and Raphael?
Yeah, that started as a secondary.
It's something more like, to me, it's almost like something that the main characters see or observe, as
Yeah.
opposed to it being a big plot point. Like at some
Yeah.
point, we just thought it'd be funny to have something happen. And you know, Catalina's best friend is just happens to come out of her kind of cousin brother's bedroom. Like, what's going on? Everyone's like, oh, okay. So it's like that.
We went really funny with it. So at some point, right, he's clearly burned. He comes downstairs. He's clearly making 2 plates. And, you know, Catalina is like, you know, this is kind of ridiculous. And he's like, no. This is how it is. You know, he take, you know, so everybody knew except for Runa, you know,
Yeah.
because it's kind of silly. You know, she's literally in the family of private detectives. They're observant by nature, you know, and they're trained to be observant. Of
And
course
it's
they
just,
knew.
yes, it's funny that they're kind of keep it on the down low.
Down
like-
low, yeah, nobody says anything about it, you know, because they're respecting her wishes. And then she's super shocked. She's like, so everybody knew. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
and that's just
everybody knew.
because that was just funny. Like, I don't know. I think as far as setting up, we've probably set up, like, in my mind, a potential romance for Arabella at the end of the last.
We
And I
did.
could spoiler that, but I
No,
won't.
let's not spoiler that.
Oh,
You know, but Nalini,
I know, right?
I'm so glad that you touched on the fact that what the fans want or ask for is not always the best thing for the story. Because it's like, you know, especially with Kate Daniels, it became untenable because it was like, every book was like, and this character was not in the book. And this is my favorite character. And I am deeply disappointed. I hope you understand that I am
yeah.
deeply disappointed. I threw your book against the wall because
Yeah.
so-and-so wasn't in it. And
And
I'm
what's
like,
our
oh.
what's our options? Do we artificially insert the character into the book or the narrative that doesn't necessarily
Doesn't
need to
necessarily
be
need
there?
to be in there. You know, when you have a large cast, you have to make choices, and the choices are what serves the story.
Mhm.
Not
What is
everyone's going to be happy
absolutely
with it.
necessary for the story. If you are not needed in the story, you don't have a part in it. Like there's one story, one
So
of the,
ruthless.
yeah, because it's like
Love it.
one of the novels, like, you know, the dog wasn't in it for the duration because, you know, people were dying and having
Yeah.
a stroke and, you know, things happened, right? And people are, where is the dog? And I'm like, okay, you know, next time I will artificially have the dog come in, puke on the floor and walk out.
Yeah,
Just so
there you
you
go.
know that he's there.
Guest appearance.
You know, there you go. Guest appearance via courtesy of Grendel for you. But yes, it's so important to stay true to the story that you want to tell, because when there's a lot of readers and they're so vocal enthusiastic because they love the books, they tend to pull you in every direction imaginable. And it's, you know, especially with an established series, I find it harder and harder to kind of set this boundary. That's why, you know, we kind of hesitated about reviving the Kate Daniels a little bit, but it was just such a fun story.
Yeah, and like we've often compared it to, like, you know, we're cooking dinner. We're not short order cooks. Here's what's for dinner.
Yes.
And it's, yeah, it's on the table. You eat it or you don't. At least that's how it was in my house. As opposed to like, hey, what do you want to eat? Hey, what do you want to eat? Like, you know what? I'll tell you what you're going to eat. How about that? Because this is
what you're having.
Yeah,
you
this is
know,
what you're having.
You know, so yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to eat, but I know what I'm cooking.
yes, that's inside of family.
So you don't know what we're gonna read, but you know what you're writing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Okay, so I have 2 more questions. Because these are super long running series, what would it take? I'm just gonna ask for one of your series, like Kate Daniels or Psy-Changeling, since that we're talking about. What would it take for that series to end? Nalini?
Hours.
Oh, I think you should ask them first. I've been
Okay.
fielding all the first questions. So
Oh,
I'm gonna think
Ilona?
about it.
Go ahead, Ilona and Gordon. I know, I've been trying to go back and forth. No, Nalini handed it over to you, Ilona and Gordon, and you're up.
Damn it.
We ended ours, so we're off the hook.
Oh,
No, you started it again, so it doesn't count.
You did.
Technically a new series, Nalini. It's set several years later.
You know what does it take for us? Okay, let's take the Kate series. We needed Kate and Curran to be safe.
Yes.
We needed them to have a happy ever after and to be able to sort of disappear and just be together. We needed them to I guess thwart all of the threats
Yep.
that they faced, so where they could realistically step down
Yeah,
from
because-
their
And the threads, so the readers are not left hanging and going like, oh my God, I'm so unfulfilled.
for
Um,
Innkeeper, obviously Dina and Mon
Parents
have to
must
find
be
their
found.
parents.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's a goal. Creatively, yeah, there's always a goal. If you're asking professionally, writer-wise, there is a, like for the Kate Daniels series for us, the pressure, combined pressure from the publisher and the fans became too much.
Hmm.
It was not enjoyable for us anymore. And, you know, both of us do actually love the active writing, not just having written a book, but sitting down, putting words together, putting things. It wasn't fun anymore. We felt like no matter what we did, we couldn't please everyone, you know, so the pressure was just crushing. And so, yeah, we ended it hopefully satisfactory. We walked away from it and we were perfectly happy.
Yeah, it never was like we've had this question. I don't think you've ever asked us, but we never planned for the series to go as long as it did.
Yeah.
We imagined 1, 2, 3 books.
Mhm.
So
And then
we
it just
never
kinda
imagined
grew and
the
grew.
fact that it got to what, 11 books?
Oh
I don't
gosh,
even remember.
if you're just doing the Kate
Yeah,
POV, it's 10.
10.
We did
Well, I always
10.
count the Andrea. I always count
Yeah,
the gunmetal magic.
but like 10 years of our lives. I think that's
We
probably
never
enough,
planned
you
for
know?
that. So I think just naturally we were kind of done with the series.
Yeah,
But like for again, it's gonna have to be, you know, Maud and Claus and Dina finding their parents.
yeah.
And we've actually, a little spoiler, we talked about that today. We talked about something
Don't
that.
promise it.
Oh,
Don't do
I'm
it,
not
don't do
promising,
it, don't
I'm
do
just
it.
saying we have about something that would help us get to that spot.
Yes, okay.
A theoretical thing.
Thing. Nalini,
Okay. Nalini,
Yeah, you're doing the segue. But I've had some thinking time now. No, I think I agree with your answer, Gordon, which is that we want the characters in a particular place. And so I'm gonna take the Guild Hunter series, even though you said Psy-Changeling, because it's slightly easier to sort of explain, which is I want Elena and Raphael to be in a good place when we say goodbye, and that I leave so the readers have been on this long journey with me, right? And I want to be able to say, hey, I took you to a good place and I've left you with a good feeling, that you invested these years, you know, into reading these books. And I want it to be really satisfying. Like you have a meal, you know, you have a big meal and it's just, at the end you're just like, oh, it was a good ride, you know, like it's, you know, it was good. And so that's the feeling I want to leave readers with. And I want my characters in a space where I feel good leaving them. And so yeah, so that's a Guild Hunter series. And I will say Psy-Changeling is structured slightly differently. I do know where I want to end it, but it's not as clear cut, because it is as much about family, that series, as it is about the politics and the plot overall. So in a sense, it is the same answer. I want to give readers like a good feeling. But because this is also such a long running series, I also want to not push it too far, right? I want to know, I'm going to know when it's time, because I will have difficulty writing the stories. Because I think what Ilona said about actually enjoying the writing process, I'm going to know when we've come to a point where it's actually, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to force it. You know, this feels good. It feels good to walk away, even if, you know, I haven't done every single story I could possibly tell in that world, but maybe that's okay. Maybe I leave that for the readers to imagine, you know, and I am at peace. I'm at peace. And I think that's a very instinctive feeling as a writer, to know that you can walk away and feel good about this thing that you have created and spent, you know, decades of your life on. And I think it is that dual thing of making readers, you know, feel good, having come on this journey, leaving your characters in a good place, and also as a writer, you know, feeling that you're leaving them in a good place. So we know when it's time, I think.
It'll never be time. The same.
Must be
Okay,
fine.
last question. What is up next for you? What I know Resonance Surge hasn't even come out yet. Magic Claims just came out, but what will we expect next? Ilona and Gordon.
What am I allowed to say? How much?
No, we are waiting on feedback from our agent. We were planning on working on our surprise project. And then we may end up pivoting a little bit and doing something else for a little while, which is part of the reason why we don't announce what we're working anymore, because it's like, okay, you know, once you announce it, people expect it,
Yeah.
and then they're disappointed. So we are going to wait until our agent tells us whether or not contractually we are clear to do what we are suggesting. So let's wait and see. I'm giving a very vague
Yeah,
answer.
man, come on, dude. What the hell?
I don't know. We'll have to
I
wait
want
and
the
see.
truth.
You can't handle the truth.
There you go.
And that's why we're married.
We also want the truth. But okay, so how about this, Ilona and Gordon? Where can we find out as soon as possible what this surprise will be? Is it your blog? Is it your newsletter? Where?
Yeah.
So there's two places. So the blog itself, right? And you can sign up for a publishing newsletter or you know, our regular newsletter. Regular newsletter just emails you all of the blog posts, which is just mostly rambling and things like, hey, the book is out. You know, the publishing newsletter only goes out like 2-3 times a year and just says, hey, we have a new release. You know, alternatively, if you drop by our website, the first menu options, like top left, is the release schedule. And that has everything, what's coming out, what's been out, complete book list, you know, when we have a date, like, which means that we have either finished the draft or are very, very, very close to finishing it. We will put the book up on there, because then you will know for sure it's imminent, it's coming.
If you see a cover, then it's probably.
If you see cover, yeah, if you see it mentioned, you know.
But she's right, like, for a couple of reasons, I don't even want to say, because first of all, our agent has to tell us whether we can do this thing.
Yep.
That we're thinking about, and we don't want to say a thing, and then for whatever reason it doesn't.
Backtrack, you know.
Like, promise you guys the cookie and then not give you the cookie.
Yeah, so it's like, we changed our mind, it's now ham instead of the cookie.
Oh God, that's so nasty.
That would be disappointing.
Yeah.
Disappointed, yeah, so we're gonna plead the fifth on that.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll be following you very closely, as we already do. Nalini, how about you?
I was just going to say one thing to that. I also find that for me, I like having secret projects that I just work on with no pressure whatsoever. Like, I don't tell anybody. I just, it's good to creatively just to have that space, just to explore the weird ideas that may or may not end up a book, and that's okay. And that's where a lot of my sort of books have come from. It's just from playtime. So I think it's good to have a few secrets. I know it seems mean not to tell, but yeah, it is good to have that space sometimes. For me, I have Resonance Surge, obviously coming out in July. And then later this year, I have one of my thrillers is coming out, and all the thrillers are standalones. So if you want to pick one up, you can pick up any of them. So the one coming out is called There Should Have Been 8. And it's about a group of old high school and college friends who are now adults, and they're all set in New Zealand, my thrillers, and so they meet up for a reunion. There's obviously, you know, there should have been 8, so there's not, you know, 8. And they're in this remote alpine region, and something went horribly wrong, you know, back in their college years, and now one of them is determined to get to the bottom of what happened, and they're stuck in this really old ancient pile of a place in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, and then things start happening. So check that out. And after that, my next Guild Hunter book is coming out in the first quarter of 2024. And so that's yeah, that will be, I have written it. It has so just but in, you know, it's in draft. I can't share anything with you guys yet. And yeah, it's a good book. I like it, and I hope you will too. And if you want to, you know, get, for me, the best place to find information is my website. And while you're there, sign up for my newsletter. So I do send, I'm not really a blogger like Ilona and Gordon. So I do a newsletter once a month that's that basically has all the information and conversation and books I liked and whatever. But like, I know some newsletters get very spammy. There's too many. It's not me, guys. I don't have the energy for that. So once a month at max, probably you're gonna get a newsletter from me. And I suppose every so often, if I have a cover reveal or something, I'll send that through as well. So that's probably the best way to you know, get the excerpts and, you know, tidbits and stuff. And yeah, after that, we'll see. So that's my next 3 releases.
Amazing. You could write a newsletter to me every day and I would read it, because I do read the blog every day. I read Ilona and Gordon's blog every day, as often as they post. So, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Thank you so much for talking with me and, I don't know, like 7,000 of your fans. We're so excited that you were here and took your time and really answered so many questions. So appreciate it. Thank you for everybody who came and stayed with us and asked your amazing questions so that I had something to talk about. And I will send out a recap with the recording and any information, but we hope to see you again soon in the romance world. So thank you, Nalini. Thank you, Ilona and Gordon.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Bye.
Or morning, Nalini.
Yeah,
Bye.
morning. I'm gonna go have breakfast now. So
Okay. Funny. Well, you know, you get to eat what you get to cook or something like that. Goodbye, everybody.